So, welcome back to the Social World podcast. I'm Dave Niven, and as always, it's a pleasure to have your company. Today, I have a special guest, and I want to sort of dive deeply into the world that he inhabits and that he's become particularly well known for. Wayne Reid is a professional officer with the British Association of Social Workers, and Wayne has been there for many years and has established himself as one of the leading voices, if you like, in this country to do with anti-discriminatory practice and to do with ethnic minority rights, etc., and a whole load of other initiatives which we're all going to dig into. So welcome, Wayne, to the programme.
Thank you, David. Thank you for the invitation to come on your podcast again.
Okay, good. Yes. Wayne was on the podcast many, many years ago, so it's lovely to catch up. Now, just for new people who didn't catch you that first time many years ago, I
Mhm.
think it would be helpful if we just explained a little bit about your route to where you are now. Now, you're a qualified social worker, and you, as I said, you're a professional officer with the British Association of Social Workers, which is a very responsible job. So, could you just tell people a little bit about how you came into social work and what your work involves at the moment?
Yes, thank you, David. I started my social work career as a placement officer working for a private fostering agency. That role was an administrative role, very much office based, but it gave me an insight into the role of foster carers and social workers and other professionals who are involved in the team around, the child and young people.
Yeah.
And it really made me enthusiastic, really, about trying to get involved. From there, really, I went on a long journey around the houses, really, I suppose, through different roles, working for the probation service, Sheffield Youth Offending Service. I worked for an adult mental health team. I worked in child protection for a period of time as a young person's advisor with care leavers. Also as a supervising social worker, which was the role that I'd seen initially working for that private fostering agency that I aspired to. And then I've been at BASW now for coming up to 8 years as a professional officer and social worker. And as you say, there's a few bits and bobs on anti-racism that I've done over the last 5 years.
No, you have. You're well known for it. I mean, let's not be modest here. I think that let's talk about some of the things that you've been involved with. I'm sorry if I've got the chronology wrong here, but I think each of the issues I want to mention with you are very important, and you can correct me in terms of when they actually occurred. But the Black and Ethnic Minority Professional Symposium.
Mhm.
Now, you were involved with that, weren't you? And could you say either what it is, when it was, and what your involvement was?
Yeah, thanks, David. So, in 2020, post George Floyd's murder, I think it was late that year, perhaps in the autumn, we had done quite a bit of work on anti-racism in social work around that time, and we felt we needed to create a space for Black social workers, Black BASW members, people from ethnic minority backgrounds. And we did just that, really. And we brought together a real kind of high caliber of social workers from various social work backgrounds, different stages of their career, who were all and are able to sort of lead on many different projects, resources, and outputs in relation to policy, practice, and education.
Mm.
Their webpage kind of demonstrates that.
So it was set up, as far as I was reading, to influence social work policy,
Hmm.
to help jump over, if you want to put it crudely, structural obstacles that they faced as professionals, and to become essentially, if wherever possible, role models for Black and ethnic minority professionalism. Now, how would you assess the impact of it then in the 5 years since it was formed?
I would assess the impact as being huge, really, across those domains that you've mentioned, policy, practice, and education. There's a lot of work actually that isn't captured on that webpage, um,
Mm.
and a lot of work that's happened behind the scenes in terms of meetings with key stakeholders, for example, involvement in reports and publications that have been announced nationally, in relation to child safeguarding, for example.
Hmm.
Um, some of us are also involved in the social care res, the workforce race and equality standards. And then there's, different practice roles also that members of the BPS undertake in terms of in their local environments, their workplaces. They might deliver presentations and training sessions for colleagues and their workforce. They might develop different resources also, whether that be webinars or shades of bias, which I'm sure we'll talk about later
Yeah, we're
on.
going to talk about that in a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a real kind of, I think there's all sorts of impacts really that the BPS have been able to have on social work, which have all been overwhelmingly positive as far as I can see.
Well, obviously, I'm very pleased to hear it because otherwise,
Biased in my own way, though, I have to say.
yeah. How, how about let's pick out let's talk about successes first within it. I mean, do you have any particular moments or issues that you're particularly pleased about that the symposium actually you feel made a difference in?
Yeah, there's a lot to choose from, all
Well,
sorts of,
I'm
yeah,
sure. I don't anything that specifically
yeah.
stood out.
Yeah, I mean, specifically, what springs to mind is the Synergy Sessions, which is a partnership between the BPS and the
Hmm.
Professional Capabilities and Development Group and BASW,
Hmm.
which is a mini
Hmm.
series focusing on different topics. Because that is a sort of joint enterprise, really, between both groups. I am particularly proud of that. I believe that's a sort of first in BASW in terms of, thematic groups doing that. So I am particularly pleased about that. There's all sorts of member involvement that we've had behind that project. And yeah, it's really been able to platform key issues.
Yeah.
So the synergy sessions, and I suppose it would have to be shades of bias as well, if I'm honest, that has been,
That's where it sprung
yeah.
from, was it? Shades of Bias.
Um, Shades of Bias came from more of a we have different committees in BASW and our England committee. Some issues were brought to their attention around the experiences of practice educators and students, specifically
Okay.
that
Okay.
dynamic. And that was really the origins really of member voice
Well,
being
let's talk about it now then. We might as well since we brought it
all
up.
right.
Um,
Mhm.
now my understanding of Shades of Bias from what I've read and what I talked to you about before and what I've seen is and it's a versatile case study template
That's
that
right.
allows critical reflection about discrimination, oppression, and racism, and how it manifests itself in social work. Now, it's much deeper than that. I understand that, and it's got much more kind of possibilities. But
Mhm.
is that a fair opening statement?
Yes, it is. I think it captures part of Shades of Bias's potential. There's certainly that trio of oppression, discrimination, and racism which it
Mm.
tackles. But also, I think just in terms of who can complete it,
Yeah.
that
Tell us
could
a bit
be.
more about that. Tell us a little bit more in your own words then about it.
Thanks, David. Yeah. So yeah, victims and survivors can complete it. Witnesses and observers and people or the person responsible for bias can complete it as well. And depending on who is completing it, there's some prompts within the actual template itself that supports and enables somebody to actually fill out the form. The form can be used privately, sort of for personal or therapeutic or cathartic benefit, or it can be used as part of a formal procedure, whether that be a complaint or a disciplinary process, supervision or something like that, or a team meeting. So it's got really quite versatile use in that respect. Um, but it can also be used in terms of education, and that could be around the work of students or people as part of their professional development. Um, People obviously who we support in the community. It can be used by them, but also by professionals in relation to their interactions with members of the public as well. So it's really quite multi-dimensional.
What struck me about it was that it wasn't just a good tool in terms of allowing people to have, if you like, something to focus on, something to write down their experiences, and their
Mhm.
worries or their pleasures or whatever it would be about situations to do with oppression. But
Mhm.
that it was also, as you said, the word you used the word cathartic. It wasn't just an opportunity to vent frustration. It was an opportunity to have a proper working intellectual tool that helped professionally both sides of the coin. Is
Mhm.
that fair?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I love about Shades of Bias is just its fluidity, if I'm honest, because I like to think that people would use it for a variety of reasons, to be honest. And there was a session I did earlier on where somebody made suggestions in about ways it could be used that I'd not even thought of, to be honest. So, I just
Right.
like that fluidity of it. And I think obviously it was the issues of racism which were the catalyst in many ways. But the fact really is that it can be used universally by people who encounter disability discrimination or
Yeah. Yeah.
neurodiversity
Yeah.
discrimination and so on.
And,
So
and others, I imagine, too, such
yeah.
as misogyny, domestic
Hmm.
violence, etc. I mean,
Yeah.
I get it that the racism was, if you like, the primary driver.
Hmm.
But you're right. I mean, from what I've heard from you, and now you're telling me in that way that all these other oppressive and discriminatory situations have validity within shades of bias and within its remit.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I suppose I'm a sort of humanist at heart, and fortunate that the people who have also contributed to this, that sort of perspective and approach to life resonates with them. So, the product is Shades of Bias, really.
So basically, at the end of the day, I mean, because we'll put links in the podcast, the front page of this podcast about how people can access all the details of Shades of Bias if they want to get it, to use it for themselves or they want to learn more about it. There's going to be a link on the front page, so don't worry about that.
Thanks
But
for your support. Yeah.
but generally speaking, it's not just an opportunity, as I see it, to be critical.
Oh,
Uh,
definitely not. No.
it's more of an opportunity to kind of, as you said, to kind of have a cathartic time of actually shedding some of the worries and getting it down on paper and using it as an educational tool.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Primarily that, it's definitely not about blame or guilt, um, or I guess promoting or perpetuating a sort of blame culture that exists already within social work. It's really about getting people to be honest with themselves first and foremost. Somebody might complete the form and not actually do anything with it. They might just keep it completely private and they might just support the way that they want to examine something that's happened, either to them or something they observed or something they've perpetrated.
Yeah, because
Um,
they could complete it and stick it in a back cupboard and never let anybody see it if they wanted.
exactly. Yeah. And if that helps them in some way, great, more power to them, really. But also, there's the kind of universality about shades of bias, as I was saying, where it could be used the other end of the spectrum. Let's say a worker or somebody who's observed some sort of discrimination, oppression, or racism is making a complaint within their organization. Shades of bias can help them to make sense of what's happened, the incident, to formulate their view and articulate themselves really in whatever proceedings happen from that. So then there's obviously lots of different scenarios along the spectrum, but that would be my take on it.
No, no, fair enough. I mean, tell me a little bit about how you see so far the its introduction. How's it going and how's it being received as far as you can see?
Well, the initial feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. It really has. There's been a lot of support from various organisations and individuals. The Irish Association of Social Workers were really, really supportive prior to it being launched in terms of a focus group that we had that will be online quite soon. Um, and they were really receptive to it. And then from there, that's really been a launch pad. And this morning, I delivered a session to the principal social workers for children and families in England, and again, they were really positive about it. Um, there's lots of requests from different organisations for presentations and guest appearances, not just for myself, but the BASW England team. It's just really essential people see this as a team
Mm.
enterprise But yeah, it's become a real kind of positive reflection of what BASW England's trying to achieve really in social work.
I was going to say that now that you have introduced this, you're going to be a busy man by the sound of it.
Yeah, I'm already busy to be honest. Already not a lot of enough minutes in the day, but it's good busy, and in the current climate, I'm just really grateful to have a job.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got Shades of Bias, which will be available front page of the podcast, links and so on. But I mean, I really would suggest that everybody does have a good look at this because any new way of looking at what are rooted and inherent problems in our society can't be bad to have a try, I think.
Mhm.
Okay, some other things about Wayne Reid, if I could push you in another direction for a second.
Yeah.
I'm amazed to see that Wayne's weekly newsletter,
Mhm.
which was on LinkedIn, and it ended a year and a half ago, but
Mhm.
had 48 editions and over 4,000 subscribers. And there was a generic social work newsletter, and it had late news updates, announcements, and everything from the British Association of Social Workers, from the Department of Health and Social Care, and so on.
Mhm.
But the back catalogue is still available on LinkedIn. But for goodness sake, Wayne, what made you start that?
I don't know, to be honest. I have these kind of out of body experiences sometimes, I think. And I sort of look back afterwards and think, oh, how did I do that? And yeah. But anyway, it was in its own way cathartic for me at the time. And because of I guess some of the projects and work streams that I was involved in, I was exposed to lots of different information. And I was also producing quite a lot of information and resources myself, and with colleagues and members, etc. So I just thought a newsletter would be a real good vehicle, really, to support me in absorbing some of the information I needed to know at that time, and also kind of distribute what I thought would be helpful stuff to colleagues across the
Yeah.
country as well. So I was really glad that it was well received. It allowed me to have a bit of creative expression as well. So yeah, it ticked a lot of boxes. And then as things developed, I think it kind of evolved over a period of about 4 years or so. I kind of thought there was other directions I needed to go in really. So that's then when
Hmm.
synergy sessions and some of the other projects like Woolly Racism and things were kind of focused
Yeah.
on.
I mean, I can appreciate that. I mean, I guess you decided to work in the afternoons as well.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of running at that time as well. So strange
Well,
lifestyle.
listen. I want to talk to you about something else because
Mhm.
since I've known you right from the beginning when we first met,
Mhm.
um, I, you were very interested and have become increasingly successful in the media, if you like, in sort of forms of the media. And in this case, it was the written media. But you've also done an awful lot of broadcast media interviews,
Mhm.
and if you know me from the past, I always think that that's one of the most important shop windows that any organisation, and in this case, British Association of Social Workers, can have, because if they aren't in the front shop window making their case, people will imagine and assume all sorts of wrong things, and it becomes more and more difficult for social workers on the ground each day to
Mhm.
actually make their case and get across the threshold sometimes. So you've always been involved in, if I remember, in that. I remember working together with you at the beginning.
Mhm. Mhm.
So how's that feel now for you in terms of not just your media presence, but you can talk about that if you want, but generally the media image of social work?
Okay, yeah. I guess first and foremost, what I should say is that yeah, we definitely go way back, David, right to the very beginning of my BASW career, and we met on your training course around media interviews and how to sort of
Hmm.
conduct ourselves. And
Oh,
I
I
remember,
remember you well. I
yeah. Oh
remember you.
well, all positive, I hope.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Oh, yes. Sorry. You're all
so,
right there.
yeah. But I remember your Paxman style repertoire, David, which is why I'm sort of a little bit, kind of. wearing, I suppose. But yeah, in terms of the media stuff, yeah, I've done again a few bits and bobs to do with that, and the course that you facilitated for us was really kind of beneficial, and again was a good introduction for me into all the different factors and considerations around that, because I'd been in frontline practice, as I mentioned before,
Mm,
for all those years prior to that, so I was a little bit like a fish out of water. Um,
mm.
so yeah, that was my initial kind of indoctrination, really, and then from that, uh, obviously, some
Well,
of the
you
work.
can now swim. Let's put it that way. I mean, I've been impressed with all the times I've heard you or read you about the media. So you obviously have taken it like a fish takes to water, I think. And I think that the trouble is we haven't got enough of you. That's what I feel.
Ah, that's really kind of you to say. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I suppose I have got a passion for my job. I have got a passion for, BASW and what BASW was about. And I think that being the voice for social workers, which as you've already alluded to, they kind of are misunderstood, I think, quite a lot of the time by allied professionals, but also the public sometimes. And I'm not saying it's all doom and gloom, but I don't feel there's always a fair representation of social work. And obviously there's all the things then around working conditions, etc., which is, well
Mm,
documented, caseloads, etc. So yeah, for me, I am just passionate around all of that stuff, social work generically, and then obviously the experiences of colleagues from Black and global majority backgrounds, because that's the background I come from, and so we all naturally kind of gravitate towards that, of course. But I also am passionate about social work generically as well,
mm.
and the humanist perspective that I was talking about before.
Well, look, if you like, freeze yourself for a second, right, and look
Mhm.
around you. Do you feel that there are enough strong voices for social work in all forms of media at the moment?
I think some of it is about that, maybe around there, maybe this isn't the strength in tone, and there isn't the numbers maybe of people that we would like representing the social work as kind of assertively as maybe is sometimes needed. But I think some of it is also about opportunity, and some of it is about creativity. And I think some of the work that we've done in BASW England has shown that really that within the confines and constraints of social work, in terms of it being quite a bureaucratic profession, quite obviously politicized profession, conservative with a small c. Despite all of that, we've been able to be creative and still develop, and develop resources, but also work effectively with partnership agencies and drive things forward. So yeah, it comes back to opportunity and creativity for me, as well as the obvious obstacles.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, the last question on this particular subject, really, I would ask you is I've always felt that it's important not to steal, let's not be too dramatic, but to take from the neighbours good ideas.
Okay.
So our international colleagues, obviously, some have good ideas and some have other ideas that wouldn't work at all in the UK.
Mhm.
But do you ever get the chance to study and introduce ideas from abroad in terms of social work practice or social work policy, whatever? Because it's always struck me that the British Association of Social Workers is also a member of the International Federation of Social Workers.
Yeah.
And as you might know, I sit on the board, the international advisory board of the Global Institute of Social Work.
Mhm.
And I'm really taken with now the range and the depth of social work all over the world. But in the
Mhm.
Western industrialized countries, which I suppose is the nearest that we have to modeling our own sort of practice,
Yeah.
there's so much goes on that I think, goodness, why can't we have a try at that? Or what about that? Do you feel
Yeah.
that there's enough conversation on these issues?
Yeah, I sort of I see where you're coming from, and a lot of that resonates. And interestingly, coincidentally, really, I was just on another podcast with Professor Hegley and Lisa Chen, and that was an international project which
Hmm.
explored a lot of what you were just talking about there, which, for them go under the banner of decolonizing social work and
Hmm.
decolonization.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think there is a definitely momentum around that in social work. Um, maybe more from an academic perspective. Um, I think that yes, the decolonization sort of ideology, I think, is gaining momentum, and that's really positive in terms of other non-European
Yeah,
cultural or indigenous
yeah, yeah.
perspectives being incorporated into different aspects of social work. So that I think is a positive
Well,
thing.
good to hear. I mean,
Yeah.
very good to hear. I mean, I always appreciate, and you've got to admit that if you like, if you want to take the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere as two very crude kind of splits,
Mhm.
that in the northern hemisphere, social work mainly focuses more on individuals and families, whereas the southern hemisphere mainly involves more to do with communities.
Mm, yeah.
And I've always felt that transfer of skills between both would be highly helpful.
Oh, I agree.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there'd be a
Okay.
natural interdependence, I would have thought. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. And I will pass on not only this podcast, but your ideas and your thinking to colleague social work podcasters around the world, especially in the US, who we've got a good relationship with
Oh,
on
thank you.
in
That's very
social work.
kind.
So sadly not in politics, but never mind. Um, okay, I want to talk to you about something else called the synergy sessions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, these were, I believe, I'm reading now, a mini series of collaborative webinars between BPS. Would you like
That's
to
right.
tell people what that is?
Yeah, so the BPS is the Black and Ethnic Minority Professional Symposium
Yeah.
I referred to earlier. Bit of a tongue twister, so we just call them BPS.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just they wouldn't everybody wouldn't necessarily understand what it was. So
of
just to
course.
just to be clarified. So each episode had a different social work topic, and they had guest speakers on it. You chaired it, 4 episodes, and I've got down the list of the episodes, so I won't immediately go through here because I want to ask you firstly, what stimulated it, and what's your experience been from it? How do you feel about it?
Right, okay. Just to say that that project, the Synergy Sessions, is in collaboration with the Professional Capabilities and Development Group at BASW as well,
Okay,
another
okay.
acronym, the PCND group. Um, so
And I
yeah,
will put a link to it on the front page as well.
oh, thank you. Very kind, David. Cheers. So, yeah, those two groups I've supported for many years now. The BPS since 2020, as I was saying, the Professional Capability and Development Group, probably a little bit less than that, I think. But yeah, it's a real privilege to work with all the members in both those groups. And for quite a long time, those groups functioned fairly sort of semi-independently in that there wasn't much cross-pollination, shall we say. And because of how some of my thinking and work streams developed, in my mind, it just seemed a good idea to get them to collaborate on certain projects, whether that be around professional development or social work education, and policy actually as well. But it's just been really beneficial. So the synergy sessions was really a fruit that was born from that relationship in many ways between those two groups. The first episode, we had Dr. Joanna Rawls, who delivered a presentation on critical thinking, sort of a nice, lively discussion between group members from both of those groups with Joanna. The second episode was on lessons learned from an anti-racism curriculum
Mm-hmm.
and social work course in the east of England at the University of Suffolk. Um, and then the third episode was on Black leadership, where we had Laurel Brown and Beverly Tarker. And then the most recent episode is around practice education and the role of practice educators, which was influenced by a lot of our work around looking after practice educators and a report that we've published recently on that.
Okay. Are
So
there more planned?
at this stage, probably not, just because
Okay.
I'm spinning so many plates. They've all been quite organic up to now. They've just sort of progressed them as time's allowed. But yeah, I never say never. But yeah, just
All right.
competing
I
premises.
mean, it sounds a really good initiative.
Thank you.
Hmm. Okay,
Yeah.
look. So In the sense of then in developmentally, we did mention, and you know, people know, the listeners know that a lot of my kind of podcasts have got involvement, if you like, with sort of the broadly safeguarding, if you like.
Mm.
So, I mean, it's either safeguarding within the community, it's safeguarding internationally with things like human trafficking, anti-slavery,
Mhm.
etc. But broadly, would you say that, do you feel that safeguarding gets enough of an airing in its own right? Because we've got such different contemporary issues now of the
Yeah.
issue of the headings that I just mentioned that
Mhm.
I think and I know aren't getting the airtime or the training time within social work education these days.
Mhm.
And yet they're so huge, whether it's the internet or whether it's, as I said, trafficking, slavery, grooming, whatever. But there's very limited amount of training, and yet they're the biggest issues to do with safeguarding on the planet.
Mm. Yeah, I take your point. I think safeguarding is a very sort of fluid and subjective term, and now it's become a catch-all for lots of different things, but also new contemporary things that maybe weren't on our radar, 5, 10, 15 years ago. So very complex, and obviously there's a lot of nuance to it as well in terms of children and adults, marginalized groups. Um, there's all sorts of different sort of connotations, I think, within it. So I think it is difficult to keep
And it's a
ahead.
nightmare sometimes to serve everybody equally.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I used to chair a partnership board in Bradford, for
Mhm.
example,
Mhm.
of which in Bradford there's 127 languages spoken.
Yeah.
Try and get a generic, equal
Mm.
safeguarding message out there.
Yeah.
There are basic practical problems sometimes, and as we see,
Mm.
people do have kind of fantasies about other kind of minorities'
Yeah.
behaviors that aren't anywhere like true, but because there hasn't been enough time spent, it
Oh,
gets
yeah,
locked
completely.
into kind of mythology.
Yeah. I think that's replicated right across the country as well, and inside
Mm.
and outside of social work. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Just generally speaking, Wayne, I mean, I'm sorry putting you on the spot for this, but I believe there's about 100,000 social workers in the UK,
Mhm.
something like that. So, have you any idea the proportion at the moment that come from, say, an ethnic minority background? Um, in other words, I imagine it's reasonably considerable, but I mean,
Mhm.
I really can't swear to it. Have you got any clearer idea?
Not to hand, not immediately, no. I believe there is some data available. Some of that is available by Social Work England, I believe, and also some from the data collection from the Social Care Res, the Workforce Race Inequality Standards.
Mm.
So I think there's different fragments of data that exist. Um, that generally corroborate the fact that there are, as you'd expect, more workers from Black and global majority backgrounds the further south that you go towards London and sort of Birmingham, less so
Interesting.
the further
Yeah,
north that you go. And also the glass ceiling, which again is quite well
yeah,
documented, that
yeah,
there are
yeah.
lots of workers from Black and global majority backgrounds who are maybe frontline workers or unqualified staff. Some who are perhaps social workers, but there is a definite glass ceiling when it gets to management and senior management and certainly executive level and national roles. But as for numbers, yeah, it is really quite fragmented at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think because one of the last questions I'm going to ask you, because we've got about another, I don't know, about another 5 minutes.
Hmm.
I was going to ask you is, and I'm not sort of saying a bit like the Queen on her birthday, to give a message to the nation or something like that. But what I am going to ask you to do is to just give your own from the heart kind of thoughts to people from black and ethnic minorities and other, ethnic groups effectively that might have thought they might like to come into social work, but might be put off by all sorts of, as I said, mythology or ideas that they've heard that might not make it an attractive place for them. What I
Mhm.
mean, have you got a way, messages that you would like to give out? Because I'd like to give you a minute or two just to literally talk to anybody who's listening who might be considering what to do next.
Okay, yeah. I think my general advice would be to follow your own individual intuition. And if that brings you into social work, great. I think social work has to be understood as a vocation or a kind of calling, as opposed to a job, or sort of dead end job. It really is about that altruistic, doing good, for the benefit of individuals and communities, families, etc., despite some of the challenges. And sometimes, they can be really quite testing and challenging, um, obstructions to undertaking the social work role. So I guess the passion that people have that they bring to social work really can be a fuel in overcoming those obstacles. There's certainly lots of benefits to being a social worker around career progression. It doesn't necessarily have to be within a
Yeah.
local authority. It doesn't have to be linear in terms of routes through to management. There's all sorts of different avenues that people might want to pursue. So for me, I think, as I say, it really has to be something that somebody authentically wants to do, and not just something that they see as a sort of easy, straightforward, or particularly lucrative job.
No, good.
Yeah.
Well said. I do think that more people need to hear that it's a clear profession now. It's been such since about 1970 at least,
Yeah.
and social work has become established in this country. And funnily enough, across the world, and I know you might be aware of this or not, but for example, I did a podcast with a professor in Beijing
All right.
called Johnson Wong. And
Mhm.
Johnson, for 10 years, he set an organization up called Social Workers Across Borders, or Social Workers
Yeah.
Without Borders. I can never get which
Yeah.
word it is. And he trains social workers to be first responders. He
Ah, right.
trains them to go along with the fire services and the rescue services and goodness, so to
Mhm.
get in, whether it's tsunamis, earthquakes, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's got some in the Ukraine at the moment.
Hmm.
And, it's a perfect fit. I've always, why have we never done this before?
Yeah.
For people bringing social work professional tasks
Hmm.
to that traumatic moment.
Yeah, definitely.
Whether
Yeah.
it's working with the families, rehousing families, supporting families in rehousement, talking about bereavement, goodness knows what else. But
Hmm.
it just fits,
Oh,
but nobody in
completely.
this
Yeah.
country does it.
Yeah, well, I mean, at BASW, we have the social workers in disasters campaign and resources that we've developed. That's been really kind of positive and well implemented by some local authorities. There's always some work to be done, of course, but that really is a showcase resource and campaign as well in that
Mm.
area.
Well,
Yeah.
it's an interesting chap. He spends his time. I think he lives near Macau, but
Yeah.
actually, it's a shared institutional experience between a Hong Kong institute and he actually the professor. You'll love this one. He's a professor of social work at Beijing Normal University.
Oh, right. Okay. Normal.
That's what it's called, Normal University.
I see.
So,
Okay.
but anyway,
Yeah,
it's
interesting.
listen to his podcast. It's
Mm.
a bit of an eye
Yeah.
opener. Anyway,
Yeah.
look, Wayne, it's
Mhm.
been an absolute pleasure catching up with you.
Yeah, you as well,
Um,
David. Thanks again for the
I'm
invitation.
well, you're welcome, and I'm sure people will be really good to listen to some of the stuff you've been talking about. And as I said, we'll give them links. But as well as that, they can always catch you through the British Association of Social Workers, both
Of course.
website, etc., can't they?
Yeah, they can, through my email address, or LinkedIn. I use that as well, but that is the only social media I tend to use these days. So yeah,
Okay. Wayne Reid, thank you very much. And I hope to keep catching up with you as time goes by. So that's it.
yeah, me
Thank
as
you
well.
very much.
Thanks, David.